The world is holding its breath as a rare political storm gathers over New York. In just hours, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is set to deliver what diplomats are already calling an explosive address to the United Nations, an address that could tilt the fragile balance of Middle East peace efforts and send ripples through every major capital. Behind the carefully worded press releases and quiet back-channel meetings, a high-stakes game is unfolding where military power, cutting-edge technology, and decades of unresolved conflict collide in a single, pivotal moment. Welcome back to my channel. This is not just another speech on the long and bitter Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Sources close to the negotiations suggest Abbas will speak with unprecedented urgency, framing his remarks around the accelerating militarization of the region. Over the past year, drone surveillance, precision missile systems, and AI-driven reconnaissance have turned the skies over Gaza, the West Bank, and neighboring states into a constant theater of tension. Every new weapons test, every unmanned strike capability, adds weight to the pressure building around Thursday's address. Abbas knows that the technology of war is outpacing the diplomacy meant to contain it, and he is expected to call out the world's failure to rein it in. Diplomats from Europe, Washington, Moscow, and Beijing are watching closely because this speech is emerging at a time when peace talks, once thought impossible, are showing faint but undeniable signs of life. Regional actors including Jordan, Egypt, and key Gulf states have been quietly pushing for a framework that would limit military escalations while opening corridors for humanitarian aid and economic cooperation. But the same corridors are being shadowed by stealth drones and satellite tracking systems that can turn a moment of optimism into a sudden crisis. Abbas is walking into the UN virtual chamber, knowing that any misstep could trigger not just political backlash, but also a technological arms race across the Middle East. What makes this moment even more volatile is the chain reaction of conflicts surrounding it. From the drone wars over the Red Sea to precision strikes in Ukraine, the global landscape has become a testing ground for unmanned warfare. Nations once hesitant to deploy cutting-edge systems are now racing to match their rivals, and the Middle East remains one of the most strategically contested arenas on Earth. For Palestinian civilians living under blockade and military surveillance, the sound of a distant hum in the sky is more than background noise. It's a reminder that the future of warfare is already here. Abbas is expected to demand international safeguards before this next generation of weapons turns fragile ceasefires into meaningless paper agreements. As Thursday approaches, intelligence analysts report an uptick in cyber probing and electronic jamming attempts across the region, signs that powerful players are preparing for potential fallout from Abbas's words. The question now is whether this speech can harness the world's attention long enough to slow the march of technology that threatens to outrun diplomacy itself. The stakes surrounding Mahmoud Abbas's upcoming UN address are not limited to Palestinian statehood or negotiations over borders. They cut to the heart of how war itself is waged in the 21st century. In recent months, a surge of advanced drone activity has been reported over Gaza and the West Bank, including unmanned aircraft capable of conducting real-time surveillance and precision strikes without risking a single pilot. Defense experts warn that the proliferation of these systems is eroding the distinction between open war and uneasy truce, leaving civilians in a constant state of uncertainty. Abbas is expected to seize on this danger, using the global stage to demand an immediate halt to the unchecked deployment of unmanned military platforms that hover over crowded cities and vulnerable aid corridors. Behind closed doors, intelligence analysts from NATO to the Arab League are quietly mapping how such a speech could alter the region's power dynamics. Israel's growing reliance on AI-assisted missile defense networks and reconnaissance drones has already reshaped its deterrence strategy. At the same time, neighboring states are rapidly investing in their own fleets of long-range drones and counter-drone systems, creating a technological arms race that plays out above one of the most densely populated regions on Earth. Any pledge by Abbas to resist this militarization will resonate far beyond Palestinian territory, striking at the core of debates over how far military technology should be allowed to advance without global regulation. But technology is only one piece of the puzzle. The political calculus is equally fraught. Abbas enters this virtual UN session at a time of mounting frustration among Palestinians, many of whom have lost faith in both the international community and their own leadership. Peace talks have stalled for years, and the humanitarian situation in Gaza remains dire. Yet a quiet diplomatic push has begun to gather momentum. Recent back-channel negotiations between key Arab states and Western powers hint at a possible framework for de-escalation, one that could combine humanitarian guarantees with phased security arrangements. Abbas is expected to frame this moment as a narrow window of opportunity, warning that without immediate action, technological escalation will slam the door on meaningful peace. The echoes of other global conflicts will hang heavily over the chamber. In Ukraine, drone warfare has become a daily reality, reshaping strategies and revealing the vulnerability of traditional defenses. In the South China Sea, rival powers deploy unmanned systems to shadow naval patrols and stake claims to contested waters. These examples are likely to serve as a cautionary backdrop to Abbas's remarks, reinforcing his argument that the Middle East is not immune to the forces transforming warfare everywhere. His message, according to advisors, will be simple but urgent. If the world does not move to contain this technological spiral, no agreement, no treaty, and no ceasefire will remain secure. As Thursday approaches, diplomats warn that the fallout from Abbas's words could take many forms. A bold call for international oversight of drone warfare could rally humanitarian organizations and sympathetic nations, but it could also provoke swift pushback from powerful states unwilling to limit their own strategic advantage. The entire session, though virtual, is shaping up to be one of the most closely watched and potentially consequential UN addresses in years. As the countdown to Thursday's address ticks away, the United Nations finds itself under an unusual kind of pressure. Normally, speeches at the General Assembly fade into the diplomatic noise of carefully balanced statements and vague promises. This one feels different. The anticipation surrounding Mahmoud Abbas's remarks has turned the virtual chamber into a global arena, where the stakes reach far beyond Palestine and Israel. For many observers, this is less about a single leader and more about whether the world can adapt to the dangerous fusion of politics and technology now shaping the future of war. Security agencies in New York and across the Middle East are already on heightened alert. Cyber analysts warn of potential disinformation campaigns timed to coincide with Abbas's speech, digital strikes designed to manipulate public opinion or obscure the truth. In the age of artificial intelligence and instant communication, controlling the narrative can be as decisive as controlling the battlefield. Abbas's advisors know that every word will be scrutinized, replayed, and weaponized by both allies and adversaries. A single phrase about demilitarization, drone limits, or international oversight could trigger a flurry of market movements, military drills, or covert retaliation. Meanwhile, humanitarian organizations are bracing for the aftermath. Any sign of a renewed peace initiative could open corridors for desperately needed aid to Gaza, where medical supplies, clean water, and power infrastructure remain under relentless strain. But these same corridors are vulnerable to the very technologies Abbas is expected to denounce. Drones and precision-guided systems can strike with little warning, undermining the fragile trust required to deliver relief. The humanitarian stakes give this speech a moral gravity that few UN addresses achieve. It is not only about politics, but about the survival of civilians trapped in a conflict zone where machines decide life and death in seconds. The global ripple effects are already visible. Washington insiders hint that U.S. envoys may use Abbas's remarks as leverage to press for a limited freeze on certain categories of military technology transfers to the region. European diplomats are exploring proposals for an international drone treaty, though skeptics doubt major powers will sacrifice their strategic advantage. In Moscow and Beijing, officials are expected to monitor the speech closely, measuring how far Western allies might go in rewriting the rules of engagement. Every capital with a stake in unmanned warfare is calculating the potential fallout, knowing that a strong international consensus, however unlikely, could upend years of military planning. As the world waits, the larger truth becomes unavoidable. The tools of war are evolving faster than the agreements meant to restrain them. From Gaza to Kiev to the South China Sea, unmanned systems blur the line between peace and conflict, making every humanitarian mission a potential battlefield. When Mahmoud Abbas steps into the virtual spotlight, he will speak not just for a nation seeking recognition, but for a planet standing on the edge of a new military age. Whether his words ignite a breakthrough or spark fresh confrontation, they will echo far beyond the walls of the United Nations, into every sky now patrolled by silent machines and unseen eyes.